Okay,
Go on,
sounds good.
James, you start.
Oh, all right, fair enough. I'll start. My name's James, James Gould-Bourn, and I'm the writer of Champ, although co-writer since Ben came on board. And I am a writer by trade, would you say? I usually write novels, and my debut novel came out last year. But for many years, I've been writing screenplays of various lengths, features, shorts, because my first love was in screenwriting. So that's what I always gravitate towards.
Okay, great. Is that Frankie?
Yeah. Make sure they cut this part out as well. And would you do me a favor? Would you just... I'm just going to mute a second.
That's good. Everybody. So have you found Bristol since you moved back?
Yeah, we like it.
Did you live there before?
No, never. It was completely like, we just thought, let's move to Bristol. Never even visited before, never even saw the flat before we moved into it. The whole thing was just completely sort of, in at the deep end. Yeah. But it seems to be how we just do things, really. Even when we went to Lithuania, we'd never been to Lithuania before either, or Malaysia, come to think of it. And I think that's part of the fun, is just seeing how it goes. It usually doesn't backfire.
But also, it's like if you, it's an experience as well. So if you need to move back or move somewhere else, like, you can just do it. Especially if you're freelance, it's a nice position to be in.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got the freedom to do it, then you may as well do it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Ben.
All right, let's try that again. You just cut that part out, right? And so I'm Ben Tricklebank. I'm a co-writer and director of Champ, formerly known as Young Man's Game. I'm a commercials director by trade. Well, my background is in directing commercials, and also I came into that through design, and actually originally through music. So long-winded journey to get to where I am. Champ's the first kind of, I guess, traditional short-length feature piece or narrative piece that I've directed. I've done a few other projects that have been quite varied in their content. One of them was like a long format or like a feature-length interactive documentary. Also, a lot of short form pieces, branded pieces, things like that, similar kind of formats, but Champ is the first kind of traditional narrative piece. And yeah, that's me.
Okay, cool. And so James, maybe starting with you, can you tell us a little bit about Champ, about like the synopsis of the story and where that idea came from?
Yeah. It was a couple of years, like 3 years ago already, I think, 2018. And I had sort of recently got into or started to focus more on short films. I've been writing screenplays for years, but maybe not necessarily so much on shorts. And I kind of really got into them in 2018 because they were really nice, because I was writing my novel at the time, and then I would kind of send it off for edits, and then I would have this kind of free time in between edits. And you sort of like, you want to keep that sort of a writing momentum going. So instead of just kind of like, sitting on my ass for 2 months and waiting for the work to come back, I'd be like, okay, well, how else can I sort of keep my writing brain, flowing and creative? So then I just started writing short screenplays. And I watched Two Cars One Night by Taika Waititi. And instantly I was just like, that's a really great little film. And it was so, I love how self-contained it was. It's like, I'm kind of looking at it from this, budgetary perspective, because you often do when you're writing a short film. I think you should do anyway. And I thought, wow, like, it's got 2 or 3 actors, it's got 2 cars and a car park, and that's basically it. And I thought, wow, I wish I could write something that was that sort of, that tight, that self-contained, that didn't really, require a lot of money to make, but was also a really satisfying watch. And that's kind of how the sort of original setup for what was back then called A Young Man's Game, that's how it started, because I just wanted to have basically just 2 people in a car just having a conversation and, you know, finding a way to make that interest and to make that engaging. And then I think it just naturally evolved from there, where I was trying to think, like, how can I make it more interesting, you know, because not everyone wants to watch just a 10-minute conversation. And then yeah, it just sort of evolved until, you know, we had the I guess the final draft of what was a young man's game. And then it was when Ben came on board that the story started to take on a completely sort of different dimension. And I sort of, you know, joke with Ben a bit now that I look in comparing the two versions, Champ versus Young Man's Game. Young Man's Game was really quite one-dimensional in many ways. And now it's very much a three-dimensional film, and it feels a lot deeper and a lot more complete in comparison, really. And because it's, you know, it's no longer sort of one environment anymore. We kind of, you know, the story goes to sort of various different places, and yeah, it just, and also it's so much more cinematic now, because we had to, originally it was meant to be filmed in England, but then we had to move it because of the pandemic. And yeah, looking at it now, it's like, how would, you know, no offense to Watford, but it's like LA is just a bit more cinematic than Watford, you know. So I'm really glad that we filmed it there, because it looks incredible.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't share the same look to Watford, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah, Ben, so what drew you to the project initially?
It was, you know, it's funny, it's going back. I've been looking for a short piece. I've been developing my own ideas, but then also reading a lot of scripts, looking for something to make in the short film space. And I came across Young Man's Game, and I almost didn't read it actually the first, because it was in a database of scripts, and it was listed as a comedy. I was like, that's probably not the type of film that I'm not a comedy director. But it had all this great, you know, all these great reports on the script, and so I, you know, went ahead and read it. Sorry, one sec. I went ahead and read it, and just totally fell in love with it. And it was so contained. You know, it's funny what James is saying, like coming at it from the perspective of thinking about a story in budgetary terms as well. He's like, how can I actually get this made? You know, I read a lot of stuff that was just like some amazing ideas, but really people with no concept of like, how could this actually get made? Because yeah, short films, it's a passion project. You know, you've got to scrape together the means to make it, and you're never going to have enough money for what you really want to do. So James's initial script was just so well contained, and just this idea of this relationship between father and son, and how that plays out, and then obviously this, you know, unexpected turn that it takes. It just kind of grabbed me straight away. And, you know, we talked, and, you know, I sort of looking at it from a filmmaking perspective, and just like, how can we expand on that a little bit? How could we make it more visual? You know, it is hard to keep people's attentions in a short, you know, in any medium these days, but particularly short films. I just feel like they're not so long that people are going to sit down and commit amount of time to watch it. They're kind of short, but they're not that short. And so the idea of just two people talking in a car is a tough thing to hold people's attention over 15 minutes. So, and also just looking at how we could kind of expand on those characters. How could we say a lot of the things that they're saying in the script, but say it without them speaking? You know, how can we bring more depth into that story without necessarily always being delivered by either Jake or Danny talking to each other? And then, yeah, you know, obviously the pandemic shifted things. I mean, you know, you can bash on Watford, but we had some cool locations. It would have been, it was definitely a different film, you know, different setting. But there was, you know, I guess I connected it in the same way, you know, when I met James and we realized that, you know, I was born in Manchester, but I moved away. But then I spent a lot of my earlier years in Manchester, and James is from Manchester. Like this, all of a sudden, these crazy connections, and you kind of see how much of that background is sort of filtered into the script. And we both saw it the same way. You know, there's something quintessentially English about the father and son and going to a football game, and like, you know, you want to be a tough guy and go play with the big kids, and you know, you just kind of relate on that straight away. And it was really hard to kind of wrap our heads around the idea of transposing that to the US. I mean, yeah, there was always the appeal of like the locations could be bigger and, you know, the scale of it. But I guess we got so attached to the story being so kind of grounded in English culture that it seemed like a big departure. But then when we actually tried it, it was like, it's the same, you know, it's the same, just with a different backdrop and some slightly different language, obviously.
Yeah, when we first like encountered that possibility, the first thought was like, oh, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. It's a British screenplay, it's a British story. That's how it was written. That's what it's supposed to be. And once you sort of got over that initial hurdle and then started to think of like, actually, how could you transpose this story to, you know, to a different geographical location? We realized actually that it wasn't that difficult, really. In fact, it was quite easy. We had to make a kind of tweak here and a tweak there, but otherwise it was perfectly adaptable to, you know, to America as opposed to the UK. So it was just that initial kind of like change of your mindset, being like, but this is what it's supposed to be, and it's like, oh, but it could also be this.
Yeah, it was landing on what was the substitute, what was the replacement for football as well, you know, for soccer. It's just like that, you know, it's so ingrained in English culture. You know, it's such a big part of everybody's lives. And you know, what could that be? And like, you know, American football, just, it wouldn't have worked. It wasn't the right.
I feel like, I think sport in the US is quite different in a sense of like, I mean, from what I've got from being here, is that in the UK it can be like a religion, sort of, you know, live and die by it. And I think here it's more entertainment. I don't think you have those hooligans as much and those people who is as diehard. Doesn't feel like it's necessarily that same intensity around the sport here from a fan point of view as maybe in the UK. But so did the script have to go through 2 stages of development when, Ben, you initially came on board, and you kind of obviously loved the idea that it was contained, it's father, son, the relationship, but you wanted to expand on that kind of, was that the first stage of development where you were still going to shoot it in the UK, and then you had to go through some more changes, obviously, when you were kind of then changing the location to the US and looking at seeing how that could work?
Yeah, I mean, initially, I did a table read here, you know, just not with actors that were necessarily cast to be in the film, but just with 2 actors that could kind of fill in for those roles, and did a table read to really just to kind of see and, you know, cut that together to see how it would sit on screen, you know, just how that dialogue would play out. And we'd gone through a bunch of revisions probably at that point, but it was more about like tweaking some of the dialogue and like, do we need to say this? Could it be said with a look? You know, little things like that, which weren't really sort of big changes. But then I think through the process of that table read, and then, you know, talking a lot with the people around me here in the US, like the guys at Furlined and just, you know, the people that I work with, and sharing that and talking about creatively about the script, this idea to expand on that a little, keep the story the same, but perhaps more of it could be about the journey of getting to where they're going as opposed to them already being there. And can we find these sort of moments in there that tell the same story, but get us to see a little bit more of who these characters are? Because, you know, once we're at the location that they go to, there's nothing there that's theirs, you know, whereas now it's like we see where Danny lives. We see the neighborhood where Jake's mum lives. You know, we kind of see that there are these 2 worlds that are colliding and that Jake is torn between. And that's an important part of who he is as a character. You know, just that whole thing of like the hooliganism thing that you were mentioning, Dave, is just like that's such a part of who Danny is, and that so attached to that character, again, sort of finding how that could transpose. But I think then the script was pretty much locked, and we were into production, and it was like March 2020, you know, kind of had it all set up with casting. I mean, everything. We were 2 days from shoot, and obviously, you know, everything kind of fell apart. But and then it went through that next sort of revision, which was actually not until the very beginning of this year, because we went back in November, tried to shoot it again, and felt like we were in a window when things were getting better, and they were, but then I think we got there a little bit too late, and it was kind of the tail end of that, and the council were just like, didn't want us to be filming in those locations, and so let it sit for a minute, came back, and then beginning of the year we decided to rework it again, and really when you look at those two versions, they changed, but it's like football changed for boxing, locations changed slightly in the descriptions of them, but it really wasn't that big of a change. And then obviously the process of scouting and then actually shooting and picking locations, it evolved a little bit again, because we actually originally concepted Danny's trailer to be outside, so we'd see this desert landscape. It'd be kind of on the outskirts of a town and the edge of the Mojave. But then when we were scouting, we found this barn, which we were going to shoot exterior to, but then we were inside. It's like, this has got so much character already in it. Kind of more unexpected. I've seen that trailer out in the desert a million times. Yeah. This is something a little bit different. So
I love the fact that he has his home in this barn, and the outside of the trailer is just an extension of his house. Yeah, with the sofa and the TV and everything. It's just, I love that. Ben, had you collaborated with a writer before? And James, had you collaborated with a director before? I mean, how did that work? Did it feel natural? Was it easy? Were you just kind of on the phone back and forth, kind of having conversations, or was it emails? Like, how did you kind of go about working it?
It was, I had collaborated with a director friend of mine in Lithuania on a couple of short films before. And so I was a little bit used to that process, but because writing novels is such a kind of very solitary environment, and you can't really collaborate on it for, basically until you've written it, which can take months or years, you can't even really show it to anybody. So it's a very lonely environment. Whereas writing shorts, I've quickly learned how much I enjoyed the collaboration process through working with my friend in Lithuania. So when I first spoke to Ben and we talked about collaborating, and what was great is like Ben was very keen to collaborate on the project. It wasn't a case of, I think some people are just like, give me a script, I'll do my own thing, sort of see you later. Ben was very, very keen to sort of like for us to work together to kind of craft this film together, which I really appreciated, because obviously, it is kind of like your baby, and you do get very attached to it. So it was nice to sort of like feel included in that process. And then from that, Ben reached out just saying, hey, I've read your script, I'm interested in it, can we talk? And then it's funny, I was actually just going through those very first correspondences we had today. I can't believe it was like March 2019 or something, a long time ago. And how formal we were back then, Ben. And then, we chatted a bit, and then we arranged to have a chat on Skype. And then I think we clicked very, very quickly, because also we seem to have a lot in common, given, where we're from. But also I think we had very similar visions for the story as well. So I think creatively we're very much on the same page from the get-go.
Do you remember when, because your first version of the script it was just Dad and Jake, like Dad didn't have a name. And I said to you, we should give him a name. And I was like, I think we should call him Danny. And then, I hadn't read your novel at that point. And your character in your book is called Danny. It's just like, this is weird. Like, how?
It's so weird.
Just the little things that kind of click into place. And like we talked about who could play Danny, who could play Jake. More so Danny, because Jake, with it being a kid, it's difficult to kind of think about named actors for that. There's obviously references, but they're older now, so you wouldn't be people that you would cast.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be something I was going to ask later on, but it's probably worth bringing it up now. Obviously, it's like their relationship as a two-hander is so important. And did you have a lot of conversations about the characteristics of the actors, who you were going to cast, what they needed to kind of embody, and how that relationship was going to work on screen? and like physicality? Did you think about what they would physically look like and all of those kind of things?
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's why Drew, I was just so stoked when Drew was into the script, because he has that physicality. I always keep describing him as like, he's a guy that he looks like give you a big hug, or he could rip your head off, and that had to have that duality. Is like, that's what that role needs, because he's, there's moments where you see the fatherly bond between them, but then he's also kind of an imposing character, and that needs a certain physicality. And there was a lot of people that we talked about, it would be amazing to do it with such and such, and you realize that there's an image of that character that needs to fit. And particularly when it got transposed to the US, because of the setting, it's got to be someone that can feel natural in that environment, that can just fit into it and feel like they belong there. And then for Jake, it's tough because like that, the whole film hangs on his performance. Obviously it's about both of them, but with a boy of 14, you always hope you can find somebody that will understand what's between the lines in the script, and will understand that this isn't about reading what's on the page. It's about getting inside what the character is. And so much of his performance is about what he doesn't say as opposed to what he does. And Kingston got that straight away. So, we were really lucky to get those two. They were perfect. And yeah, it was definitely, that was the most challenging part, really, was like how to cast Jake.
And I feel like looking at the two of them as well, without them even needing to say anything, you can see how poles apart they are as well. Like you said, with with Danny and with the father character, and how kind of his physicality, like you said, that he kind of has that sense of that, he could be the nice jovial father, but he can just switch and turn at any moment. He kind of has that presence about him. But Jake is, he's a skinny kind of guy, and he's kind of, you can tell that he's sensitive, and he kind of, they're so different. It feels like, you can just get that sense from just look at them without actually even needing any of the dialogue to kind of get that across, how they're father and son, but he's not in the same mold as his father. That's what I got.
Yeah, and that's really important, is it the physicality of Jake, as an opposite to Danny, is that, we're playing into this idea of what does it take to be a man, this view of what masculinity is, which can be so kind of poisonous to kids, because it's just like this view that you're supposed to act and behave a certain way. And for him to perhaps not fit that mold of feeling like he's a tough kid, is really important to be able to kind of convey that on screen. And it's, it's just trying to bring to light that sort of, that bullshit point of view of like, you should behave a certain way because that's what makes you a man. And so Jake needs to be kind of caught in between as well. So he's at an age where he's really trying to figure himself out as well. And this influence, this parental influence of like, this is how you should be, this is how you behave. Can be,
And so it'd be interesting, because a lot of people who are entering the fund are predominantly, there'll be a bunch of writer directors, but predominantly writers, so they might not necessarily have that production experience and know the steps to kind of take it through pre to production, and then kind of post-production as well. So once you guys won the film fund, and the money came across, like, what was the first step, Ben, that you did? Was it finding a producer? Was it kind of, did you do a bunch of stuff in terms of getting a sense of the story yourself by looking at locations, or was it first point of call, find a producer, and then sort of start to find cast and crew?
With a short film, it's like, no matter who you have around you that is going to help support you on that journey, it's all got to come from you. They're going to look to you as like, who's going to lead the charge on this thing? And so you kind of have to just go into it with this slightly single-minded mindset of like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, you know, and you just kind of have to try and involve people and show people how passionate and dedicated you are to the project, because that brings people in. You know, they can kind of see, oh wow, you know, this must be something, because you've got to kind of just take that responsibility to try and lead the charge. And you know, I said we did that table read. I talked to a bunch of different producers that I've worked with on the commercial side, you know, trying to look at ways that we could get it made. Could we try and, like, you know, use a window of opportunity coming off the back of a commercial job to work with perhaps the same DP, or bring in some of the crew, and just find some kind of some ways to optimize resources and get the most out of it. And obviously, you know, calling on favors from people. So you want to tap into people that you've worked with before, and you know, going to be willing to give you some time. But, you know, I was sort of acutely aware of the fact, with a producer, especially on a short, it's like, there's just a way of approaching that is, it's not so much that it's about being scrappy, it's just about being really creative with how you approach the way of making that film. And like in the commercial world, we're just kind of used to having access to a lot of the resources, you know, and budgets are, you know, we're always working against budgets, that there's never enough money to do what you really want, but there's generally a lot more money than you've got for making a short film. And so, you know, when I met Annika, you know, it was just such a perfect fit, because she has this experience of making short films. You know, she's been in that world. She kind of knows how to approach it that way. And I really wanted to find someone I could collaborate with that could bring that kind of knowledge and expertise, because I could pull on a lot of favors from people that I've worked with, but there's still just that core approach to how we're going to make this, you know, how we're going to get our locations, how we're going to kind of pull the right things in. And you realize you just kind of have to take on a lot more than you might think. It's kind of a test of like, how badly do you want to make this?
Yeah, no, that's it, isn't it? And like you said, everything has to come from you, because there isn't the money there as an incentive for
no one's going to
crew.
be coming up to you going, oh, you know, how's it going with that thing? Did you get that done? You know, giving you some like prompts to kind of get stuff done. You just got to kind of wake up and think, right, okay, what do I need to do today that's going to help move that forward?
And I guess it's also outside of a feature or a commercial, you're probably having to chase, I mean, hopefully not, but you're probably having to chase some crew at times to kind of get some stuff done as well, because obviously there isn't the money there. So it's like, it goes down the food chain a little bit in terms of the priorities of what they've got going on. So it's like you said, you're juggling so many balls, you're trying to kind of keep everything spinning, all the plates spinning, everything.
Yes, but I would say, you think it'd be that way, but there's also an element of, especially people that work in commercials, you know, we kind of do this because we love the craft of making films. And, you know, you realize you want people that would look at your project and go, oh, you know, it's not about the fact that I'm not going to be able to take on this better paid job, but rather this looks like something really fun that I could be part of. And you want those people to be involved, because you want people that are going to come into it and be like, I'm not doing this because I'm going to make money. I'm doing this because I love the script, or I like the rest of the team. And it's something that I can bring something to, because you need everybody to bring their best to it. And the only way they're going to do that is if they feel creatively invested in the project.
And you mentioned quickly about Ari and working with those guys, because they were able to give you guys some free equipment as well. How did that sort of process work for kind of?
Yeah, I mean, they were incredibly generous. I mean, we had everything lined up with them in the UK. They were going to provide us with a lens package, cameras. There was also some other equipment that they were going to provide for us, which is a huge help. I mean, I had raised some additional funds and investing myself into the project, but still, you know, every little bit counts, and any place that you can save is a benefit, because it means that you can either put that money elsewhere, or it's less money that you've got to try and borrow from someone, or and so that, you know, they were incredibly helpful. And I mean, also, it's like when you go into people about like, I want to make this film, when you can say like you've got certain things already lined up, it helps you get to the next steps. So when you can say, like, we've got this script, it won this contest, we have some funding, we have camera equipment, you've already got a certain amount of things in place, and it's much easier for people to get on board with that, because they kind of see that you're just a few steps away from getting it made, as opposed to I just have a script. How do I get this made, you know? But then when we shifted to the US, I mean, again, they just stepped in and were like, what do you need? You know, if we have it, you can have it, you know, if it's available, if it's not out. And we did kind of go back and forth a little bit with them. We, at one point, we sort of like maybe thinking about shooting on the LF as opposed to the Mini. And then with our schedule, we kind of realized that actually we really need two bodies to make this work, not to shoot two cameras at the same time, but to be able to rig one camera while we're shooting with the other, and just be able to squeeze more into our days. And they, you know, very generously just helped us out.
No doubt. Yeah, no, they've been great since we started the Film Fund. They've kind of been so supportive. And how did you find Drew and Kingston? Did you have a cast? Did you get a casting director on board? I mean, I imagine that you had to go through so many auditions, especially for Kingston. Was that more of an, I mean, did Drew audition, or was that something which was just you offered it to him direct? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I go back to in the UK, we had a casting director. We went through a bunch of auditions with kids, you know, self-taped auditions, and then had a couple of calls with a few different kids, and locked in on someone, and then we offered the script to, or, you know, tried to get the script to a few different people to play Danny, some more well-known people. But then, and we kind of did the same process here in the US. So Annika brought in a casting director called Jamie Ember, who she'd worked with in the past and works a lot in the film and TV world. And she connected with the script. I sort of talked about the image I had in my head for Danny, and we talked about a few different people, and then she kind of came back with some suggestions, and Drew was at the top of that list, and it was like, let's send it to him, you know, let's see if he likes the script. And he responded first. I think he read it pretty quickly and immediately got back to us. And I wanted to cast him first and then work on Jake, because we kind of, you know, once you've got that role, you kind of shape the other one around that. And we really wanted to find somebody that was a name, you know, for the project as well. And so Drew brings that as well. With Jake, we had people do self-auditions, self-tapes, and send them in. And, you know, we had an initial list of some great kids, and there was a couple of favorites. But then I was talking with a friend of mine, actually Niall, who lent us his Chevy Blazer that we used as the picture car, the bucket. And I was talking to him, having a conversation with him about, like, I was trying to find a picture car, talking about his truck, and he'd offered to lend us it. And then we somehow got onto casting. I was talking about these kids, and he said, oh, you know, I'm working with this producer at the moment. I just met her kid, and he's just been in a film. He was actually in Fincher's latest movie, and he's a great kid. You should let me talk to her. Let me see if you know. And he sent her the script. Then it turned out she'd already had the script, but they were away, so they couldn't do a self-tape. And so they kind of thought they'd missed the window. And it was like, well, no, like, we're still trying to find somebody. So then Kingston did a session. And I mean, it was a no-brainer, you know, had a call with him. Wow. And yeah. So again,
one of those things where it's meant to be.
Just a situation. Yeah, if I hadn't had that conversation, possibly wouldn't have aligned, you know.
That's crazy. And did you manage to rehearse much with the two of them before the shoot?
No, I mean, I intentionally didn't want to rehearse with the two of them together. You know, there's a certain amount of animosity or just like distance between them at the start of the film that gap slowly closes. And I wanted to shoot the film in chronological order, but also wanted to kind of have them work on their characters individually, so that we'd feel a little bit of that distance on screen, and then also feel, because they did, you know, they became so much closer with each other just through the process of filming, and you kind of feel it in that final scene. So we did some reads individually, but no, I didn't rehearse with them together.
Okay. And James, you said you've been writing shorts since 2018, is that right?
Yeah.
Do you, and I think you mentioned it before actually, that you consciously think about budgets and kind of constraints with shooting a short film, the financial side of it before you write. Is that something which you've always done, or do you kind of, have you always thought about the production side of it when you're kind of working on a short film, or do you sometimes just organically let the story go and sort of, become what it becomes and then think about that later?
I'm not sure like whether it's like a sort of chicken and egg thing, where it's like, I just instinctively write low budget films, which are therefore, easy to make, or whether I've kind of consciously got that in mind and that makes, that feeds into me writing a sort of small budget self-contained film. I don't really know, but I think like as long as I can remember, I was just always like this big movie nut. Like from the age of like 5 onwards, it was always just films. All my childhood was just films. And all through my life. And I feel like maybe it's just sort of filtered into me almost like organically. So instead of it just being a very conscious process of, people won't make it if you, write some big, sci-fi space opera or something, as much as you might want to write one. And so that's probably got something to do with it, maybe just sort of filtered in there. But also I think probably because I actually really like watching a very tight, a very self-contained film. Like one of my favorite films of all time was the original 12 Angry Men. It's just absolute perfection for me. And it's literally all just in one room, 12 actors, one room, and that's it. And there's just something incredible about that. In fact, there's another one called The Guilty, which was just remade into a Hollywood film, but the original Danish one was it just blew me away. And every time I see something like that, I think, man, like if I could just do something like that. So I think I'm always striving to make that kind of perfect little self-contained film. I have loads of different ideas for this and that, but it always just comes back to these tight little films. And but yeah, for sure, like budget, I think it's healthy to keep that in mind for anybody sort of looking to make a short film or looking to get their script picked up. They might have to write a really awesome script that loads of people love and say, wow, I wish we could make that, but we can't. So it's kind of, it's not really very helpful really. So I think, you want to write something obviously that you like and that you're proud of, but at the same time, write something that someone else can also look at and say, we can do this.
Yeah,
I think the other thing that you should take into account there, though, is that it makes you focus on what's really important, which is the story, the characters. People aren't going to come away from a short film and go, oh, story wasn't that great, but like huge production, great visuals. It's like, that's not what's going to make the film, make people connect with it. And I think that's why I responded so well when I first read James's initial script, was because all the attention was put in on these two characters and developing their relationship on screen and telling that story. And it's like, you could blow that out and tell it in a number of ways. I mean, obviously it grew from what it was on the page initially and became a much bigger deal to make and more expensive to make because of the changes that we made. But still, it was what was at the heart of it was the story and the characters. And that's what people are going to remember. And that's what ultimately is going to make your film connect with people and hopefully make them remember it and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, was it a balancing act of, because that's an interesting thing about what actually makes a good short film. What, at what point are you trying to put too much in? At what point do you feel like, is there enough here to kind of draw people in? I mean, I guess it's kind of, was that something you consciously were thinking about of like, are we trying to put too much in here? Is there enough in there with these characters? There is enough development. Yeah. Is it, it's kind of, obviously you're trying to get this story and your point across in 10, 12 minutes. It's trying to find the best way of doing that. And is it something where you guys had the discussion back and forth of kind of getting that right, of finding kind of that where it's sweet spot, where it felt like everything sort of fitted in and it wasn't trying to tell too much in too short?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to be riding that line. Like, is there enough or is there too much? We went through so many versions of the ending, like where to actually cut that off. And it even changed again when we cut it, because you see something in just how you put the scene together. But just, I guess the first part of your question, just for me, I guess what I wanted to focus on most with making a short film was a great story and great characters. You know, in my commercial work, I've done so much work that is all about visual spectacle, big visuals, you know, just trying to impress people, or, you know, make things that you haven't seen on screen before, just do something interesting, do something new. That is kind of like a reaction to that. I just wanted to do something that focused entirely on characters, was contained, and that we could really just focus on the craft of like bringing these characters, bringing this story to life on screen. And so in developing that, it was really, you know, thinking about how can we get the most out of that. I don't want to put any spectacle in there. There's no gimmicks, there's no visual tricks. It wanted to shoot it in a very simple way, but still be able to tell the story in pictures. I mean, it's a visual medium, you know. It's inevitable that when you conceive something and put it on the page, you're always trying to put everything on the page so that people can see what the story is. But then when you want to transpose that to something that becomes images on a screen, you've got to think, well, do I need to say that? Can I see it? You know?
And that was really interesting because, sorry, I interrupt you, but it was only when sort of Ben looked at it and then started to sort of, you know, feedback on it, and he was saying, you know, we might not necessarily need to say this, we could show this. And, you know, we would say that kind of at several different parts of the screenplay. And it hadn't really occurred to me until he mentioned that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, because I think as a writer, you just feel compelled to, you know, just put everything on the page, you know, because I guess it's best to have too much than not enough. So then someone can at least go through there and maybe start to trim it down a little bit. But also, you know, maybe sometimes it's easy to underestimate the audience. So therefore, oh, I better just say that, because otherwise someone might not get that or might not pick that up. And then Ben came in with this, obviously a very visual way of looking at things. And then that caused me to look at the story in a completely different way as well, and be like, oh yeah, I guess we don't really need to say all that, when like a little look will do. Or, you know, we could just show someone picking their nails or biting their nails, instead of saying this whole thing about how somebody feels anxious, or, you know what I mean? It was these little nuances, which I never really thought about. And since then, I feel like I've applied that a lot more to things I've written since then. Is like, I'm from looking at it from that perspective. Do I need to say that? Or can we just show that?
Yeah, it's that whole kind of show don't tell kind of mentality, I guess, with screenwriting a lot of the times. And that's interesting, actually, from your writing, background writing novels. It's such a shift, I imagine, your kind of how you work on the two different mediums. Is that something which took time to kind of get used to, kind of moving from your novels to when you're writing screenplays, and kind of how they differ, and actually going back to writing novels now? Is there only any overlap or anything you've taken from one and kind of been able to use in the other?
Well, I think like that I always knew that I really enjoyed dialogue. And even when writing novels, you know, I would look forward to the bits with the dialogue a lot more than I would look forward to, you know, those big chunks of, you know, descriptive text. Because I really feel very, I don't know, I find it quite a liberating experience just to kind of have these conversations with yourself, and just not even pre-plan it as such, and just to say, oh, okay, I guess it's going off in this direction now. And, you know, maybe you'll write yourself into a corner, or maybe, you know, it'll be a great dialogue. And it's a very sort of playful process. And so I think that's why I really love writing screenplays, is because they are very sort of like, you know, dialogue driven, as opposed to a novel, which, you know, you can go pages and pages without any dialogue whatsoever. And so I realized that, you know, I think screenplays are much more in line with my interest as a writer, because again, it's all about dialogue for me. And then, yeah, but obviously, you know, sometimes you can have too much dialogue, and then you need to see where you can kind of trim it back, and where you could, you know, again, it's show, don't tell. And as a writer, you know that mantra. You know, it's like drilled into your head from day one: show, don't tell, show, don't tell. But sometimes you're still like, you know, you still falling foul of that rule until someone else is like, oh, maybe you could just look at it like this. And so,
yeah. And it's not gospel as well, like you were saying with 12 Angry Men. It's like, how much dialogue is in that? But that's amazing, you know. And it's like Glenn Gert, like the kind of David Mamet kind of stuff. So, you know, it serves the time and the place, I guess. But Ben, was there anything when you went into production that you were kind of, I don't know if concerned is too strong a word, but something that you were really conscious about, that you need to get this right, to everything hinges on this kind of part of the story? Like, I don't know, was it the kind of the chemistry between the two actors? Was there a main thing which you were kind of conscious about when you went into production?
I mean, yeah, the dynamic between the two lead characters, you're always thinking about how can you get the most out of that and make sure that it works on screen the way that you want it to. I mean, just from sort of more logistics perspective, the script requires a very specific location for the final scene. That was kind of challenging, because there's a sort of geography that was required. I wanted to shoot it as is and not try to fudge it in post or find a way to cheat it. It just took a lot of conversations. James and I had a lot of conversations about, how that location could best work to pay off the end of the film. And I guess, aside from that, was just thinking about how to not have it snowball as well, because there's driving sequences, there's, a number of different locations. You've obviously got safety considerations to take into account. I didn't want to have to use a process trailer if I could help it, just because of, there's just something about seeing the character drive. I mean, you can always cheat it, and it does work great with a process trailer, but they're cumbersome, they're slow, they require a certain amount of space to do things.
Budget as well.
And there's the budget as well. And I just, when we thinking about locations, particularly for the opening parts of the film, and when they're driving, is like, can we go somewhere where we can just do that on the roads and not have to, just mount the camera, have Drew drive. He actually just done a feature where I think he spent like 2 days just driving and smoking as part of these shots. So it's kind of perfect. But yeah, those were kind of the logistical concerns. It's just like, how are we going to make sure that all fits together and that we can actually do it the way that I want to do it and get the coverage? Because still, even though we've expanded it on the locations, you still predominantly got two people in a car talking to each other, and there's only so many angles you can cover that from. Especially if you're not using a process trailer. And yeah.
And is there anything for both of you, Ben on the directing side and James on the writing side, anything you learned from this experience, and any tips that you would pass on to a writer looking to write their first short film or enter a short film into the film fund, and then also to, on the directing side, direct maybe their first short film, or just direct a short film in general?
I would personally say, because I'd entered a few screenplay competitions before I'd entered the Short Scripts Film Fund, and it's great, if you even place as a quarterfinal, semi-finalist, or even finalist, it's all great, but the chances are that nothing's really going to come of that. You know what I mean? They might put your script into the hands of this person or that person, but chances are nothing's going to come of it. And it's one of the reasons I entered the Short Scripts competition, was that there's money there to get your film kick started, and it's like you're basically saying, we can help you make this a reality, which is like the dream of any screenwriter, because like nothing is ever going to happen with these scripts unless you personally direct it yourself or someone else runs with it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's going to live in your drawer forever with all your other manuscripts. It's never going to see the light of day. And so with Short Scripts, it was the first time that I saw a competition. I thought, oh wow, like this might actually help me get this made. So that was really quite exciting. Obviously, to win it as well was doubly exciting, because it took me one step closer to actually seeing it on the screen, which is what every writer wants from their screenplay. That's what I would advise anybody, obviously, to enter the Short Scripts Film Fund, but also just look for any of those competitions where they're actually offering to help you take this to the next level. because that's what's going to get your film made.
And any kind of experience on the side of working with Ben, and in terms of writing shorts generally, is there any kind of tips that you would have for writers on kind of how to approach a short film?
Yeah, personally, I would say, like, keep it short. It sounds quite funny, really, but I feel like with a short film, if it's not done right, a short film can feel almost as long as like a feature. You know, I've watched some shorts, and I'm checking how much time I've got left, and I'm only 4 minutes in, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I've been here forever. And it's amazing that if you don't get it right, it can feel like a very, very long film. So I would say kind of err on the shorter side. You know, I've seen films that are like 1 or 2 minutes long, maybe not that short, but also just, I think Champ is a perfect example. I think, you know, it was about 12 pages in the end, and I think that's a good amount of time. Obviously, it depends what kind of story you're trying to tell. But for me, I always aim for that kind of sweet spot between sort of 10 pages and 15 pages. Because if I can't tell the story I want to tell within that time frame, then I can't tell it.
Ben, so yeah, any same question?
I think probably the biggest takeaway from making this is just, you know, you always want to get input from people, and it's great to get feedback and get those kind of responses that you're hoping for, but you've got to take all of it with a pinch of salt. You know, everybody has their opinion, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right or wrong about something. And it's really difficult part of the process, but you have to really kind of look at things, and look at what people say, look at the critique and think, well, that's great. You know, I appreciate somebody taking the time to read this, and not just read it, but also to provide feedback on it or watch it and give me feedback. But you know, does this necessarily correspond with what I was trying to say, what I was trying to do? And, you know, there's often a tendency to sort of have a knee-jerk reaction to certain feedback and want to respond to that. And then you sort of find yourself in a situation where you're trying to constantly please everybody, and
you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, you're never going to please everybody. Somebody's going to watch it or read it and go, that's amazing. Someone else is going to watch and read the same thing and go, that was crap. It's just the way things are. You know, everyone has their tastes and opinions, and it doesn't mean that what you're trying to do is bad. It's just that if you've got to have that conviction that you believe in the project and you're making it for the right reasons, and stick with that. You know, take on board the feedback. And try and take away the things that are important. Like if someone's saying like this scene isn't right, try to see under the surface of what they're saying there. And is there sort of a small adjustment that you can make there to address that? Or is this just something that, you know what, this kind of doesn't matter because they're not really getting what it is I'm trying to do here. And that's okay, because some people won't get it.
I agree with that.
No,
like learn to cut through the chatter and learn to, you know, pick and choose, and often learn to trust your gut, because the more feedback you get, the more you maybe start to second guess or doubt yourself. And that can be quite sort of destructive to the process as well. So I think but on the flip side, learn to sort of trust your collaborator, learn to be open with the person you're collaborating with. And I think I have learned a lot through this process, that you know, maybe when it came to changing the location of, you know, of the film from like England to America, my instinct was just kind of like, but no, we can't do this. It's, you know, and actually I'm so glad that we did. And I'm so glad that I listened to Ben, because I think it's so much better because of that. So I think, yeah, sometimes your instinct might be to, you know, just kind of shut down and be like, but this is perfect as it is. We don't need to change it. It's never perfect. It could always be improved, but it's just about who you're going to listen to in order to improve it.
Yeah, definitely. Like you were saying, it's like the mindset thing of like you wrote it with, you know, England in mind, and you've been working on it with that being the location for so long, that to have that shift is such a, in terms of the change, like you were saying, it isn't actually a huge thing, but a mental change to be like, oh, okay, we're going to completely kind of, you know, take it to a different continent and do it in the US is a big kind of thing to get your head around.
In a way, it's kind of a test of like whether or not the material is any good, I think, because if it's good, it kind of doesn't matter where it is. I mean, obviously you can't take like a sci-fi space odyssey and shoot it in Watford. Well, you probably could if it was a great stage, but you know
It'd
what
be a
I'm
bit
trying
like
to say. It's like,
yeah,
it's just if the story's great and you've got great characters, if it's Watford or if it's the Mojave Desert, it kind of shouldn't matter. But
yeah, that's a good point. James, what was it like when you first saw the film? Was there anything that surprised you?
Hey Dave,
Yep.
I'm really sorry. I've got to jump. I've got a call that I've got to get onto.
Yeah, no, cool, man. Sorry, I know.
But you guys should carry on.
I'll ask that question to James. But Ben, just before you go, just let us know where people can see the film or find out more information about the film and your work as well.
So we've got a website, champshortfilm.com, where we'll be posting information about upcoming screenings, festivals, press, all that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of BTS up there, the trailers up there as well. We're in the process of submitting to all the festivals for next year. I think there's a really big long list of almost 100 festivals that we're going to be submitting to. We've done about 20 so far, which the first of those will be in January. I think Flickerfest is the first one out in Sydney. And yeah, fingers crossed we get accepted into some of those. And then obviously we're waiting to find out, we have qualified for the Oscars, we've submitted, and now we're, waiting to find out whether or not we get shortlisted.
Yeah, like I think my first feeling when I watched it for the first time, I was blown away by how just the production value, the production quality is just insane. It was kind of sounds funny to say, but like you felt like you're watching a proper film. You know what I mean? It was like, it's like Hollywood quality. I was so blown away by that because I knew, Ben was going to do a brilliant job of it. And I knew we had a great team together, but I think until you actually see it, you don't quite realize like how good it looks. And, the DP did such a great job of making it look so beautiful. And the actors had just done such a brilliant job. So I was kind of just sat there with like my jaw open for like, the duration of the film, because I thought, man, like this is that little short script that I wrote in the corner of my bedroom in a flat in Lithuania, and now it's like this kind of epic in, California. So yeah, that was the first feeling. But as far as sort of like looking at those little changes that maybe sort of slightly deviated from the script, yeah, there was. But they were all for the better. Like there was my favorite part of the whole film, and it's hilarious because I didn't even write it. I shouldn't even admit this, really.
Yeah, you should it was there from the beginning.
But I don't think you could have written it, really, to be honest. It was just so natural. Is when Danny and Jake are in the car, and then Danny lights up a cigarette, and as he does so, he says to Jake, "I'll grab the wheel." And that was completely unscripted. That was just like, that just happened. And I think you can see that as it happens, like Jake's kind of like, what? And then he just sort of like grabs the wheel. And it's just this such kind of like little tender moment between like father and son. And it just, I don't know, the emotions it captures in that, just few seconds. I thought, man, like I wish I'd written that. But at the same time, if it had been scripted, maybe it wouldn't have felt as natural as it did.